Search for Power in Economic Justice by Claude Anderson. Dr. Claude Anderson. Who's who in racial and ethnic rankings? If blacks are at the bottom, who is at the middle and the top in the racial and ethnic ranking system of this country? The major elements in determining one's ranking are race, skin color, country of origin, ethnicity, and religious domination. The higher your ranking, the more you are welcomed and preferred to live as a citizen in this nation. America was established as an English-speaking nation, as an English-speaking Anglo-Saxon Protestant nation. Wealth and power are concentrated at the top of the scale in the hands of white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, WASPs, WASPs, and decreased in accord with the darkness of a person's skin color. The racial and ethnic ordering, as shown in Table 6, is a comparative analysis of the allocation of benefits, access to resources, immigration policies, and foreign affairs relationships. There was always there has always been an open immigration policy with certain allied WASP nations. Table 6. The U.S. government's preferential ordering of immigrants according to official quotas set in 1924. Nationality English, skin color white, religion Protestant, um, immigration quota open. Irish, North Europe, Northern Europe, Irish, Northern Europe, white, Protestant, 34 immigration quota, 34,007. Uh, Nationality, Western Europe, white, Protestant, Western Europe, 20,000. Eastern Europe, Eastern Europe, white, Protestant, 51,000. Southern Europe, white, Catholic, 3,800. Middle East, skin color white, Jewish Muslim, 124. Far East, yellow, yellow, 100. Hispanic brown, Buddhist other, restricted, African black, closed. Sources 68 Congress, Session 1, documents in the U.S. Department of Justice immigration records, interpretation of data by Howard Zinn, author of People History of the United States. Mhm. It was not possible for the United States to remain an English only nation. However, government policies kept the American population and power close to the original founders in culture and other respects. The highest positions of wealth and power are held by white Anglo Saxon Protestants, Catholics, and Jews. These groups have well entrenched social positions characterized by a predominance in economic and political power and buttressed with a strong, cohesive group solidarity. Since the founding of the nation, power and wealth have remained concentrated in the hands of the WASP. America was an English colony that adopted English culture and forms of government. The English are at the top of the ranking as indicated in Table 6. They accorded blacks the lowest acceptable status, and the national public policy has maintained a nearly 100% shutout of people of African descent. Consequently, even if America has humanitarian concerns about the social conditions in Ethiopia, Somalia, Sudan, Haiti, or Black South Africa, America will not provide a place in this country for many seeking permanent refuge. Their skin color makes them unacceptable. The Irish, the other part of the British Kingdom, were also reputed to dislike blacks. According to John Garrity, author of The American Nation, A History of the United States, the Irish disliked the blacks with whom they had to compete for low-level work in some large urban areas when first entering the country. One Irish leader, Daniel O'Connell, admitted that the American Irish were among the worst enemies of the colored race. The Irish the Irish had their share of problems in the emerging American hierarchy. In fact, for a time, only the blacks and the American Indians were beneath them. The pattern that emerged was a direct correlation between the relative power of a foreign nation and the status of its immigrants in America. When America was a developing nation, for instance, England was powerful and wealthy. Immigration data reflects this pattern. The English settlers held positions of power in the new country, and their people in Europe had unlimited immigration rights into this country. Other less powerful nations like France and Germany were allowed fewer immigrants based upon the descending importance of their home countries in the world order. Powerful countries and their citizens were respected. Blacks and ethnic immigrants compete for resources. Blacks and ethnic immigrants compete for resources. A continuing flow of immigrants, decade after decade, from 1607 to the present day, came believing that America abounded with freedom and wealth. Common sense dictates that that had they anticipated they would face the kind of life most black people face, immigration would have ceased immediately after the first boatload arrived. The flow of immigrants never ceased because they were never treated like blacks. As a matter of fact, ethnic and racial immigrants historically have been a wedge between whites and blacks, giving whites an alternative to interacting with blacks. Each time in history, either before or after a war, when the American economy was expanded and could have offered material economic benefits to blacks, a new influx of immigrants or refugees arrived to fill the void and further exiled blacks from fruitful fruitful participation in the national life, according to historian Dan Lacey. Either before or after a war, each time in history, either before or after a war, when the American economy was expanding and could have offered material economic benefits to blacks, a new influx of immigrants or refugees arrived to fill the void and further exiled blacks from fruitful participation in the national life, according to historian Dan Lacey. A major myth is that there has been competition between blacks and ethnic groups. There has been no such competition. There has been no such competition. European ethnics simply bumped blacks from whatever they were interested in getting because they were higher in the order of social preference. After they finished competing for jobs, housing, or union control, blacks then applied for anything that was available. If racial customs did not exclude blacks, they optimistically waited until jobs or, or housing were passed down through the ethnic hierarchy, extending from English down to Jewish. As competition for resources increased and blacks became more frustrated, conflicts for power, resources, or even basic rights are developing between blacks and all ethnic and racial groups who rank higher than blacks in the order of preference. If blacks if blacks' marginal level of subsistence does not improve, they will become the common denominator in every social clash. Since the 1980s, blacks have clashed with Arabs in Cleveland and Detroit. In the early 1990s, New York and Boston were outraged over the slayings of blacks by Jews and ethnic whites. Violent confrontations between blacks and Koreans, Vietnamese, Laotians, Laotians, Laotian, Laotian, and Cambodian merchants have arisen across the country in cities like Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., and Los Angeles. The continuous conflicts in Miami between blacks and Cubans have ignited four major riots since 1973. In some instances, blacks were angered by a single offense, by anger, or angered by a single offensive act. At other times, the riot was a response to what blacks perceived as a pattern of offensive acts. Centuries of unjust racial subordination to immigrants has generated a smoldering tension between blacks and those who came to the community from foreign nations higher in the preference order than blacks. Today, there is little cooperation, political or otherwise, between blacks and minority groups. For the most part, ethnic minorities do not support black causes. They have been getting a free ride at black people's expense on civil rights and minority programs. As members of loosely formed political coalitions, they are mostly quiet while blacks agitate, but they are quick to stake their claim on affirmative action benefits won by blacks. From Los Angeles, California to Miami, Florida, conflicts arise between blacks and ethnic groups as they seek their share of power and wealth in the mainstream beyond the shadow of blacks. In the 1990 in the 1990 mayoral election in Chicago, Hispanic leaders leapfrogged between white and black factions, offering support wherever they seem to be the most to gain, wherever they seem to be the most to gain for their Hispanic communities. David Dinkins, the first black mayor of New York City, lost his reelection bid in 1993 along the lines of racial issues. All ethnic blocs, except Puerto Ricans, voted against Dinkins. Burgeoning Hispanic black conflicts. In the 1990 census data, 85% of those listed as Hispanic also classified themselves as Caucasians. This ethnic group is the fastest growing population that is challenging blacks for numerical and political domination as a minority, which it is not. Hispanics have enjoyed the benefits of having it both ways. First, they criticize white society for its disproportionate share of wealth and power. Then they classify themselves as Caucasians. These groups classify themselves as Caucasians for social purposes, then as minorities to qualify for governmental programs. The question then is no longer who is white, it is who is permitted to be classified as white. Hacker, in his analysis of 1990 census data, indicated that most Asians, Middle Easterners, and Hispanics by culture and color are allowed to enter and move up the class system. They are permitted to they are permitted the option of calling themselves white for benefit purposes. Thus, a common front is being formed, with blacks the only excluded group. Hispanics reap great advantages and receive benefits under minority programs by calling themselves minorities. Although first generation Hispanics do experience some cultural discrimination, they have not suffered historical statutory injuries by the government within the continental United States. Their higher ethnic acceptability among whites deflects benefits and resources that should be directed to blacks. Besides having gotten themselves included under the minority label, what is the justification for the U.S. supporting a never ending influx of Hispanics from Mexico, Central America, Latin America, and the Caribbean islands? How can Hispanics, whose ancestors have previously benefited from black enslavement, equate themselves to blacks who are still suffering through the worst human holocaust in the history of mankind? More specifically, why would the government continue to perpetuate a wrong by comparing a fluid, ever-changing Hispanic and Asian immigrant population with a static black population? Hispanic and Asian populations qualify to receive services to help minorities to assimilate and advance into mainstream society. The static black population remains intact until the next generation of immigrants arrive needing minority assistance. The Department of Commerce, money, income, the Department of Commerce, money, income of household, families, and persons in the United States 1991 report indicated why most Hispanic and Asian ethnics should not be grouped with blacks. Table 7 shows that from the civil rights movement of the 1960s to the the 1990s, whites, Hispanics, and Asians have maintained a constant income advantage over blacks, with no appreciable closing of the gap. For a comparative example, the median household income for 1991 was 18,807 for blacks, $22,691 for Hispanics, 31,569 for whites, and $36,449 for Asians. And table 7, median household income of race and Hispanic origin, 1967 to 1991. Not available. White, Hispanic, not available. 18,000. All households. All right. How can Asians and blacks be considered equal in a minority assistance or affirmative action program when Asians have not been historically enslaved or statutorily deprived and have median household incomes that double double that of blacks? This kind of economic injustice troubles blacks and serves as a major cause of ethnic clashes. When examining population figures, similar concerns should be raised about comparing the conditions of blacks to Hispanics. Blacks are being handicapped centuries before the present Hispanic population arrived in the United States. In 1840, when there were 4 million blacks in America, there was no record of any significant number of Hispanics. In 1862, the annexation of Texas, California, and other territories in the Southwest increased the Hispanic population to approximately 4,000 as compared to 5 million black slaves and freedmen. By the turn of the century, Hispanic immigration combined with high birth rates had increased the Hispanic population by approximately 2,500%, with black birth rates increased by nearly 100%. In the 1900 census data reported a population of 100,000 Hispanics and 9 million blacks. Over the following 90 years, the birth rates of the two groups remained relatively equal. Yet, in the 1990 census, showed an incredible increase in the Hispanic population that was growing at a rate that was 9 times faster than the black population. How could the Hispanic population close the gap between themselves and blacks in such a short period of time? The answer is in the annual immigration influx of nearly 2 million Hispanics by both legal and illegal means. This amounts to a continuous, never-ending flow of Hispanics into this country, all of whom all of whom entered the social order at a higher rank than black. Conclusion. Blacks are not immigrants and cannot emulate them. Their circumstances spring from different experiences and options. Blacks have been a part of this country from its inception. They have never received recognition or benefits commensurate with their labor and wealth contributions to the development of this now rich and powerful nation. The difference in the treatment, the difference in the treatment accorded uh, Asian, Hispanic, and European ethnics makes it quite clear that contributions of hard, uncompensated labor, patriotism, and cultural gifts have little to do with who is permitted to assimilate and enjoy the fruits of American society. Okay, dominant society remains insensitive and ignorant of the great insult to injury it has committed by allowing a string of immigrants across the centuries to receive the first class citizenship status that has been denied black Americans who have served as builders, laborers, and military veterans. Blacks are insulted when members of ethnic and racial groups come to America from countries that were formerly U.S. enemies, Indians, Asians, Hispanics, and nearly every conceivable European ethnic group has engaged in some form of declared war against Americans. Blacks are the only racial and ethnic group that has fought in every major conflict on the side of white America. The insults are further compounded when white society provides new immigrants refugee aid and family assistance while begrudging it to blacks. More insults are added on as whites then label the newcomers minorities, accord them equal claims to the country's affirmative action programs, sell them homes in neighborhoods where blacks remain excluded, make business loans to them that are denied to blacks, and praise them for their strong sense of cultural unity. The same unity that white society fears and seeks to destroy when exhibited by blacks. These folks, I tell you, the heck y'all talking about? Y'all ain't talking about nothing. I ain't got no plan. Yeah, talking about nothing. All they just agree. Saludos. Espero que estés bien. All right. See y'all in a few. Gonna be exercising next.